back, everybody. It is the Working Brother back at you with another talk. This time, yet again, we've got Dragoljub Bosnić on. Hello and welcome back. Drago, how are you doing?
Great. Always a pleasure being here.
Excellent. Glad to have you back. How have you been? How have you found the last, let's say, week or so since we talked, considering everything that's been going on in the world?
Well, there's been a lot of news, I guess, and it's been quite crazy. I mean, a lot of major things happened in only a few days, so I guess we have a lot to talk about.
Well, one of the first things that I wanted to bring up, one of the articles that you wrote recently, is this article about Putin's arrest and the International Criminal Court, or the Clown Court of Europe, whatever you want to call it. What do you have to say about the International Criminal Court? And save us like the read. Some people like reading, but save us people who don't like reading what you wrote in this article.
Well, in short, the thing about this warrant, should I say, I mean, quote unquote warrant, it's actually very self-defeating for the political West, and I really don't understand why they did it, because essentially this is going to force many countries that Putin might visit at some point to actually break the rules and break their own laws, because many countries are signatories to the ICC, and essentially, I mean, they're not going to arrest a president, of a superpower. So essentially, they're going to have to break their own law because obviously they're not going to do it. And this is going to destroy the reputation, the already very, let's say, weak reputation of the ICC, if they ever had any reputation to begin with. So, I really don't understand what they were trying to accomplish with this, because it's not going to limit Putin in any way, but it did destroy their credibility, if provided they ever had any. So
there's that German, there's that German Minister of Justice or something like that, or the Minister of Interior or something, I can't remember, who said that he is going to comply with it and arrest Putin if Putin ever comes to Germany. Do you think that this is a possibility? Do you think that this is a declaration of war? What's your take on this?
Well, essentially, it could be considered a declaration of war. However, considering all the things that the German leadership said in the last year or so, I doubt Putin is going to visit Berlin anytime soon. Because Merkel actually said that she lied. She actually boasted about lying to buy time for the Kiev regime. So essentially, she basically spat on everything she said to Putin, everything she promised. Basically her credibility is dead. And I mean, it's not just that her political career, that her credibility as an international leader is dead. So I doubt Putin will be coming to Germany anytime soon. And even in the unlikely possibility that he does, I don't see how Germans would dare to arrest the guy, because first of all, no president of a major power comes country alone, right? He doesn't come like with two guys. He comes with thousands of agents, actually sweep the area, essentially months before he arrives. So I doubt that's going to be a possibility in any way.
I've got this video queued of this guy from the ICC, thanks to The Guardian, who probably stole it from someone else. But
17th of March,
let's hear what he has to say.
The International Criminal Court has issued 2 warrants of arrest in the Ukraine situation. For Vladimir Putin, President of the Russian Federation, and for Maria Lvova-Belova, Commissioner of the Russian President for Children's Rights, for the alleged war crimes of deportation of children from Ukrainian occupied territories into the Russian Federation. It is
this is what we were going to talk about at the end.
Forbidden by international law for occupying powers to transfer civilians from the territory they live in to other territories. Children enjoy special protection under the Geneva Convention. This is an important moment in the process of justice before the ICC. The judges have reviewed the information and evidence submitted by the prosecutor and determined that there are credible allegations against these persons for the alleged crimes.
I can't listen to this to the end.
I would just like to point out there's one true word that he used. It's alleged. Everything else is... Yeah.
Yeah, that's one way to put it. I don't know. This criminal court, I heard a theory. It might be true. It came from another comedy channel, so who knows? That it was set up to like try the African nations originally. The ICC was. And then it was mutated to be just like anti-Serbian in Yugoslavia. Can you speak to that a bit? Like the history of the ICC?
Yeah, I mean, the interesting thing is this court is not recognized by any major power in the world, like neither America nor Russia nor China, India, and I mean many other major nations. So essentially, it's just used by the big powers, particularly the Western powers, to feign international law. It's to basically fake it and to pretend that there is international law and that they are enforcing it. However, the interesting thing is the Americans actually have a law. I mean, it is literally a law. It is codified in the American Constitution that it's the so-called Hague Invasion Act. Or ICC Invasion Act. So if the ICC were to ever arrest an American soldier, regardless of his rank, they have the legal right to send troops and liberate the guy, or just just save him from the international justice. So
what you're saying is basically we back in the 90s, the only thing we were missing was a law, and all of the people that were extradited there wouldn't have had to have been.
And a couple of thousand nukes to support the law, I guess.
Yeah, probably. Yeah. But you think Russia is also missing a law? You think they'll backdate a law now and solve the problem?
Yeah. Well, they don't have to. They already have provisions that protect their own soldiers. They don't need their own servicemen. So they don't need a special law for that. But anyway, they're not a signatory to the ICC in any way. So this would be completely legally void for any Russian. Regardless of if he's a soldier or a civilian or anything like that.
And even Orban, or better to say his foreign minister, said that they will not comply with it because they're not a signatory, like the statute, basically. So yeah, clown world. What can I say? The next story that you brought for us, Drago, is the U.S. and Taiwan planning to equip Kiev regime forces with swarms of drones. This is a very interesting topic, one that is close to my interests at least, because I am a drone pilot after all for the last 7 years, for those of you who may not know. This is something that I've seen coming. And we saw in this conflict how it has gotten more prolific, the use of drones. Tell us about these U.S. and Taiwan supplied drones.
Well, this is essentially like a DARPA project. It started off as a so-called black project in the early 2000s, but they didn't have enough technology, and the know-how to implement it. So, of course, now that has changed in the last 5 to 10 years, especially the last 5. And essentially, it's not just about having the drones. It's about having the AI or the advanced AI to be able to control all these drones simultaneously, and also requires very advanced software, very advanced networking. So essentially, they're claiming they've managed to do it. They've managed to create such drones. And essentially, they're calling it swarms of swarms. And indeed, that's what it is. Like, you have hundreds of drones in one swarm, and then you have like dozens of these groups or subgroups, which are part of a larger group of thousands of drones. And essentially, what the goal here is to dominate the battlefield by simply, destroying all enemy units in the area with these tactical small drones, and essentially disabling all these fighting units that the enemy has in the area. So at least that's what they're claiming. And the thing is, because Taiwan is a major producer of microchips and these semiconductors, Taiwan is the only, let's say, the only entity, let's not call it a country, it's not really a country, but the only entity which has the capability to mass produce these things outside of China, of course.
Yeah. For those of you who are watching and not just listening, we've got some footage of, it's actually quite old footage. How old is this? Well, this says it's 10 months ago, but I've seen this footage from earlier, at least 2-3 years ago, of basically what Drago is talking about. These are not militarized yet, but you can imagine a couple of these being suicide drones and then coming along to surprise you in the forest. That would not be fun, I can say that for sure. What else can we say about these drones? I don't know. I don't think Taiwan, as you say, is the only place that can create them. Yeah, they have the high-tech superconductor stuff and the chips, but I don't think it's just Taiwan. I think China.
Oh yeah, that's why I said, like, outside of China, Taiwan is the only, like, let's say, Western or pro-Western entity that can mass produce them and make them relatively, like, affordable. The cost of labor in the U.S. is prohibitively expensive, which makes the U.S. not a very good place to mass produce these things because they would be way too expensive. So they need someone to match China's production of potential, and also China's, like, extremely cheap. We should also, like, take notice how cheap it is. So the point is, like, in the case of a real war or a shooting war, China would have a massive advantage because, churn out these things like in tens of thousands, while Americans would be able to do only like a few hundred or maybe 1,000 at most. So they need someone or some country or entity with comparable production facilities.
Got it. Let's see what you've got here for us next. The Russian tactical nuclear weapon story. But before we get into it, let me find where that video is of my favorite Belarusian, Mr. Lukashenko. And
если они безумцы, то они вот этому процессу дадут толчок. Вот самое страшное и самое опасное. Поэтому от безумства надо немножко уходить в сторону. И потом, как только эти боеприпасы взорвутся на позициях войск России, вы увидите, ответ будет страшный. Для всей планеты уроком будет. У России не только объединенный уран. Вы это прекрасно знаете. Поэтому я думаю, что вот этот тренд в этой войне, в плане эскалации, и начинать не надо. Надо двигаться так, как Путин с Си Цзиньпином разговаривали, к мирному урегулированию. И российское руководство, и одна из крупнейших мировых держав, Китай, и многие-многие другие с этим согласны. Бог есть.
So, that is what Mr. Lukashenko had to say about the depleted uranium and the Russian, let's say, or combined Russian-Belarusian response to it. What does your article tell us about it?
Well, first of all, I just want to say that, the preparations for the transfer of these Russian nukes to Belarus, it's been going on for a few months. And it should be noted that this is not in response to these depleted uranium shells that the UK is sending. What really it is about, it's about the Polish request to get American B-61 nuclear bombs to Poland, which would basically put them at the Russian border because of the Kaliningrad area. So
wait, what? The Poles ask for nukes? Really? I missed that. Yeah. I didn't know that.
Actually, they've been doing it for the last 3 or 4 years. It had nothing to do with the Russian special military operation. It was actually something that they asked, years ago. And after February 24th, 2022, they've escalated these requests. So we don't really know if they have transferred these nukes. Officially, they haven't. Officially, they're not. They're still in Germany, Turkey, and all these other countries that have these nuclear sharing agreements with the U.S. But, covertly, they could have done anything. And what I think is that the Russians probably found out about something, or at least about the preparations to have these nukes transferred to Poland. So what they're doing is they're basically just, getting ahead and trying to, prevent the Americans from getting an advantage in this region. And also Belarus wants these to make sure that it has a deterrence capability against possible nuclear attacks. So it's going to be, as you said, like a mixed Russian-Belarusian force that's going to be like these nukes are still Russian. They're in the Russian custody, just like the American nukes are still American nukes in all these NATO countries. But Belarus will have the ability to fire them and deploy them in the case that it's that it's attacked or jeopardized in any way. So this agreement essentially mirrors what NATO is already doing. So it's really funny for me, that they are blasting Russia and Belarus for doing this, considering that they've been doing it for 70 years now. So
I don't know. It's funny to me that this nuclear sharing. I heard on another comedy show that's exclusively on Telegram that nuclear sharing is you keep our nukes and you get bombed, and we share the damage of the mutually assured destruction. but that's about all the sharing that you get in the nukes sharing deal. Yeah, that pretty
really
much sums it up.
Poland, of course, Poland. I understand that Poland needs to feel safe, but how are they going to feel safer having nukes, on their territory? Because when you have nukes, that kind of makes you the priority target, So I don't.
Yeah.
I really don't.
Yeah,
don't understand.
Exactly. It's like playing chicken with people with the nuclear weapons.
Exactly.
And it's not the smartest of ideas, to be blunt. The next comedic article that you brought for us today. Russia's inexplicable, mind-blasting, unbelievable ability to withstand Western aggression. Tell me about this Western aggression that Russia is withstanding.
You mean to say the democratization efforts of the West, right, to make Russia the part of the civilized world, of the garden?
Yes. The Garden of Europe that's currently burning everywhere from France to, France. That's more than enough.
Yeah, one of the most powerful and one of the largest European countries, right? So essentially, in short, what I wrote in that article is that the amount of funds and finances the West has used against Russia is just mind-blowing. And it actually is 22 to 25 times more than what the Russians have invested in this operation. So the inexplicable thing here, and I intentionally put that on the quotation marks, is that how is Russia able to do that? Like, how is Russia able to get a much bigger bang for its buck? Like, is the West filled with morons who are not unable to, win against a country which is much, let's say, weaker economically than they are? I mean, that at least on paper. So the point is, we have to take into account what's called the GDP or PPP. Like, we have the nominal GDP and we have the GDP PPP, or the purchasing power parity. And this is the true scale of world economies, And you know how they like to say that Russia is like, the 14th or 16th economy in the world? Their economy is the size of Spain or Italy, or it's smaller than Canada's, and so on and so on. So I think this is not used by any analyst worth his salt. Basically, how can you believe that a country with 6,000 nuclear weapons has the economy of Spain? And why does Spain not have 6,000 nuclear weapons, or the second most powerful army in the world? People don't ask these questions, but they simply read these mindless titles in their propaganda media, or should I say free press. how can you believe that a country which is supposedly so weak is able to withstand fighting the most powerful military alliance on the planet? So that's the inexplicable part. Of course, I explained how is it that possible in the article, but the thing is, like, you have to look at it from multiple perspectives to be able to understand how it really works.
So basically, to like sum it up for people who are not into economics, what you're saying is like, you know, the $100 worth of rubles gets you more iron in Russia than it does in the States, basically.
Yeah, yeah.
And that
Exactly.
iron translates into tanks and, you know, other things. Martianov, Andrei, I think, did a really good video about it, like yesterday or the day before. He outlined basically that, you know, how, and I think Putin said something along the lines, or at least he said that Putin said, that it doesn't matter what the West produces as far as tanks and sends towards them, they'll double or triple their production without much strain. And yeah, Russia has a huge military-industrial complex that is, you know, rather overlooked. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, we could even say that considering the size of all these economies around the world, and considering that it's just one country, we could say that it has the largest military-industrial complex, which is inside Russia, or just one country in this case. On the other hand, the U.S. has actually outsourced much of its military-industrial potential, like maybe not the lethal parts of producing weapons, but everything else has been outsourced because, you know, otherwise the American weapons would have been impossibly expensive, like crazy expensive, like even more expensive than they already are. So the only way for them to keep their military-industrial complex working is to still have these outsourced companies working for them. So that's why America essentially needs to, you know, maintain its like global empire. Otherwise, it's going to collapse. Like, you take away just one part of that, you know, global machine, you know, the rest of it is very, very, you know, likely to collapse.
Yeah. It reminds me basically of even during this chip shortage during the lockdowns, the like worldwide computer chip shortage. Some U.S. manufacturers of weapons were also short on chips, which means that even those internal components are supplied from, you know, China. So yeah.
Exactly. Like the Americans, they still keep like the key technologies for themselves, but like these key technologies are completely worthless without, you know, like these cheap components that come from abroad. So in order to sustain that, they have to like take some of it back to the U.S. But this is causing a lot of issues. And Trump actually tried to do this, you know, and he actually promised to do it, but when he realized how much that's going to cost, he essentially bailed out. You know, like he realized that the American military would be unsustainable with the cost of labor in the U.S.
Yeah, yeah. Speaking of China and cheap labor and military cooperation, the Chinese president Xi Jinping, or Xi Jinping, I don't know, and Vladimir Putin, the most evil Putler, who has a warrant out for his arrest, met in Moscow recently about the Chinese peace plan. That's what it was about. Why don't you tell us what your article here outlines about the military Sino-Russian technological cooperation?
Yeah, well, as I'm sure everybody knows now, that the meeting was really about mostly like economic cooperation and how Russia is going to supply China with endless stream of commodities, while China will supply Russia with a lot of these manufactured goods and so on. However, like the military cooperation part was, let's say, very veiled. You know, like they didn't actually say anything like specifically about that. However, I did come across a few these reports by military experts who are claiming that Russia and China, and Martiano was one of them actually, are essentially exchanging advanced technologies that they have, I mean, that the other side doesn't have. So in this particular case, Russia will get advanced electronics and technology for advanced drone swarms from China. I mean, Russia will get these from China. On the other hand, China will get help from Russia with hypersonic weapons and, you know, some other stuff. But essentially, especially hypersonic weapons. And Martyanov actually talked about this. So what China has very advanced missiles, but these are not widely deployed yet. And they still have to do, some research and development to make them work as intended. And before that happens, what Russia is going to do, they will essentially transfer some of their own technologies to China.
Mm-hmm.
And I do have some information. I'm not entirely sure, like if it's true or not, but there are strong indications that the Chinese will get the Kinzhal hypersonic missiles or the Zircon. So in any case, the Chinese will get a very, like they will get very advanced missiles to defend their bases in the East and South China Sea, and also to be able to target American bases in these areas. They can do that with their own weapons, but the thing is, these weapons are still not like they don't have the precision necessary or the maneuverability to circumvent American defenses. So they would have to use nuclear weapons, which leads to escalation, right? However, what the Russian missiles are giving them is the possibility to circumvent the American defenses and also target these American bases without using nukes. And this is very important for China's security. So they're getting this from Russia, and Russia is getting these advanced drones technologies and other stuff from China.
Yeah, so you're saying basically it's a win-win situation and it has nothing to do with the peace plan in Ukraine.
Exactly. And it's a strategic nightmare for the Pentagon, but I guess they brought that upon themselves with their incredibly intelligent foreign policy, right?
When you say strategic nightmare, what exactly do you mean?
Well, Russia is getting Chinese technologies, and China is getting Russian technologies. So that's going to be like a force multiplier for both, And because like both countries are lacking in something, right? America is also lacking in some technology, especially hypersonic. So this is going to be a big problem for the U.S., because what they were hoping for is that they're going to have different theaters against China and Russia, right? So they know that Russia doesn't have, at least for now, it didn't, like until recently, it didn't have advanced drone swarms. So they didn't have to think about creating defenses against that. Now they will have to think about that. They didn't have to think about like the hypersonic missiles being so, suddenly so numerous in the Chinese arsenal, but now they will have to think about that if Russia sells these missiles, or at least the technology to manufacture them to China. So they're going to have like a double trouble, basically.
And speaking of, it was after the meeting concluded that the foreign minister, I think, of China spoke out and said that he's looking forward to the defense minister or somebody from the defense industry, I can't remember what title he had, was supposed to visit China as soon as possible, whereas Putin will be going there later this year, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. It was. I think it was Borisov. I'm not sure exactly.
That
Borisov,
might have been. Yeah.
Yeah.
What is his title? Who is he?
He is. I think the director of Roscosmos now. He replaced the Rogozin guy. So I'm not sure. Like, I think he also heads some of the defense departments, the Russian defense departments. So it's possible that because Roscosmos is all about rockets and missiles, it's very possible that he also heads the defense department regarding these technologies, especially hypersonic missiles. So he's probably going to go there and just give the Chinese this tech that they need, and probably take the drones with him. So I mean, the drone technologies that the Russians need.
And for our comedy outrow, we've got the best article of all of the ones that you've brought. The kidnapping of Russian children. Ukrainian children by Russians. What am I even supposed to say about this? This is like the most ridiculous narrative I've ever heard. Literally ever heard.
I advise people to read the original article in The Guardian. I mean, if you want a good laugh and if you want to be mind blown by the level of propaganda, I'm pretty sure the Nazis would just be shocked by the level of stupidity in these articles. essentially what they're saying is, like this article came out as a way to justify the arrest warrant for Putin and his children's rights, Mrs. Belova, right? Livova Belova. So essentially, they're trying to present who's actually a humanitarian, a true humanitarian, as some kind of a crazy war criminal, who went out and created camps for children. So the wording in the article that the Guardian published is pretty interesting. Like, they used the word camp, So what they did is they obstructed one word from it. It was the summer camp, right? So like, these kids were basically evacuated from an active war zone, which is, like what you do when there's a war. You first get the kids and, and children and the elderly out of that area. So that's what the Russians did, right? Under the orders of Putin and Livova Belova, right? So essentially, they transferred these kids to a summer camp in Moscow. So, and the best part about this, the best part about this is that the guy who's the father of these kids was actually an enemy combatant. He was like the AFU soldier. And he was also trained in a Yavory camp in the west of Ukraine, which is known for its neo-Nazi, or should I say, liberty fighters, democracy and liberty fighters. So the guy was essentially an enemy combatant, and he was fighting the Russians for 3 years. And they got him in jail in the DNR in Donetsk, and he was there for 45 days. And then they released him. And then they helped him. Can you imagine this? They helped the guy to go to Moscow, to take his kids, and then he went to Lithuania. I think it was he went to Riga. So, and then Western journalists came to him, and he did an interview, and he said that his son was forced to sign the papers that essentially make it legal for the kids to be transferred to their father. And he presented this as they were being in gas chambers, man. I mean, it's crazy. So
listen, when I heard the story, I immediately like clicked off. You know what I mean? Because like whatever the details are, they're probably ridiculous, But in any case, now that you tell me the details, like I couldn't have imagined they would be this ridiculous or this comical or this, like upside down, topsy turvy. I don't know what to call it, basically.
Yeah, like no matter how much they tried to change the wording to make it seem like a monstrous thing done by the Russians, you have to be extremely intellectually impaired to be politically correct to believe just one word of that, because I mean, like, what were they doing to the kids? Like, were they like I don't know, beating them? Were they putting them, I don't know, like, were they forcing them to read or the Russian books or watch Russian cartoons? Like what were they doing to these kids?
The only thing that comes to mind is the only thing that comes to mind is Madeleine Albright, and that, like, what is it, 1.2 million children or 500,000 children, whatever it is.
Yeah, and that was before the second invasion. That was before the 2003 invasion. So that was like, I think, in 1997 or 8. I'm not sure exactly. And she was told, Albright was told, that 500,000 of Iraqi kids were dead because of the sanctions, right? And she says she said it was justified if you're going to get democracy and freedom to Iraq, right? So that's not monstrous, right? That's perfectly fine. But the Russians evacuating kids from a war zone, oh, that's definitely a war crime, man.
It has nothing to do with pipelines or petrodollars, the whole Iraq thing. We've got a playlist. Yeah. I'll leave a link. Drago, thank you everyone for staying to the end. Drago, thank you for bringing by some very interesting articles as always. Do you have anything to say to everyone before we sign off?
Yeah, read Guardian.
Read the Guardian. When are you going to get on Telegram? Are you going to get yourself a Telegram channel?
Yeah, I will.
You should, or at least
Yeah,
to Twitter,
I will
so that we can follow you somewhere. You have to. I'll convince you by the next time you come on.
Yeah,
All right.
I will have
Thank
it
you, everyone.
by night.
Drago, again, thank you. Everyone, have fun. See you later.